Scott,
Your wife
do
will take
we
it.
know where Scott went?
He just went to get some
He's-
water.
Okay.
He says.
Roll down.
Oh, I
Please,
do.
Scott.
I managed
There
to
we
get it
are.
for my grandson.
Okay, thank you.
Happens. We're ready to roll.
Hey, welcome everybody. Today is March 1st, 2023. Wednesday, March 1st, 2023. This is not our normal council time, but thank you for being here. This is the Cottonwood Heights City Council's work session. And we've got a lot to talk about today. So our first item is actually a review of our business meeting agenda, which will be a little bit lighter than we've seen in a bit, but that's okay. So I've asked our Public Works Director, Matt Stipp, to do the pledge tonight. We'll have a citizen comment period, and then we just moved to one single legislative item, consideration of resolution 2023-10, approving entry into a consulting agreement for trailhead design services. And that's not on any of our work sessions, so we're going to sit and talk about this here for a little bit. So actually, why don't I turn the time over to our city manager, Tim Tingy, and then we'll go to Mike too. Yeah.
Yeah, so we did discuss this at the last week at the city council work session. Brought this for you, and this is the contract. I'm going to turn over to Mike because he has. You want to share for a second? That's what I get for popping that in. Anyway, he has the more detailed information. We have made some modifications, and he'll go through that. Maybe.
Thank you. Thank you. So this is what was shown last week. I've made a few little updates to this presentation. I'll just run through them quickly. This is the overview. It's a design contract to complete a concept design, a concept site plan for this 26-acre piece. It's known as a bunch of different things, but Utah Open Lands Fundraising called it the Cottonwood Heights BST parcel. So that's kind of what I refer to it as in here. I wanted to touch on a few things that came up just in discussion over the last couple of days. One is the existence of an existing parking area. It's just off the shoulder of the road. So when that's been discussed, it's an unimproved kind of dirt gravel lot right off of the road that accesses this little community calls it a Jeep trail, and there's some history there, but people do walk on this trail, and you see some cars parked here occasionally. It is important to note it's not on the parcel, it's in the UDOT right of way, but that's there. We have acknowledged that in the contract in an amendment today, so I'll show that in a minute. This is the same thing I showed last time, and this is pulled right out of the 2020 Bonneville Shoreline Trail Access Master Plan. The site we're talking about is kind of right where number 9 is, which is a secondary access. It's not envisioned as a trail access with major amenities on it, major parking lots, like the blue dots would be, which is the gravel pit, Ferguson Park, and then the existing park and ride that's actually out of the city, but up near the mouth of Little Cottonwood Canyon. This is kind of an intermediate trail access point. But other than some general guidelines for what those could include in the master plan, it's not clearly defined, which is why we've brought this contract forward. Here's the clarification we've added to the scope, and this will be in the documentation you take action on. I circled it in red. Clarification that planning for a shared use path will absolutely be part of this design contract. And that shared use path I'm referring to would be right along the state road here. It's envisioned by UDOT and even in the Wasatch Master Plan to have a shared use path along the state road there from canyon to canyon. There's some concern that due to the conservation easement, UDOT, as shown in its EIS, UDOT shows a shared use path along most of the corridor. But because of the conservation easement, I believe, would be hesitant to construct it in this location unless we have a plan in place, which is a big part of the reason for moving this concept plan forward.
When you say shared use path, Mike, just so that everybody knows, tell us what you're talking about.
So a picture of the big Cottonwood Canyon Trail, an asphalt path that's separated from the roadway that can be used by cyclists, by pedestrians, by people with strollers. And the vision is that you will have that connects from Little Cottonwood Canyon to Big Cottonwood Canyon, all along Wasatch Boulevard, which then connects down into the Big Cottonwood Canyon Trail. And now you have this big recreation network. What we would not want to see is UDOT build that path along all of this area and then skip this parcel because of the conservation easement and some history there where there's been some discomfort between Utah Open Lands and UDOT. So we think putting a trail and a master plan bridges that gap and would help us complete that.
So I have a couple of questions. So where exactly is the gondola base
Right here,
scheduled to be? Right in this area?
this little rectangular parcel, yeah.
And so, you know, depending, of course, the record of decision doesn't come out until this summer. But another concern is that, do we know if any of the site planning that is currently in play with the FEIS, do they show any gondola towers that would be constructed either beside our open space that would bring the gondola over our open space or within our open space? Do you know that?
Maybe over, not within. We were very clear about 2 years ago, we ran into this with the rail option where they did modify this parcel. And there were a lot of tense meetings from that where they revised all of the alternatives so that there was no physical impact to this parcel from any of the EIS options. Now, whether a cable goes over it or not, I don't know off the top of my head.
And can you also describe where the Bonneville Shoreline Trail, would it come down in, or would people need to hike up through to connect with the BST outside of the open space?
I think it's undetermined, and it's where do we have an opportunity to put a trail easement? Certainly, I think it would be ideal to try to bring that trail easement down through this parcel because we do have ownership of that. Further to the east, we don't have ownership. So, you know, if I were planning this out, I would try to make sure that trail easement comes down through the city parcel to remove one layer of complexity from completing that.
So that I understand what you just said, so you're saying that right now, within the BST planning, there does not show any kind of initial thought of where the BST trail would come into the property?
I think there's a concept alignment, but the caveat there is it's shown as a concept alignment and there's a margin of error basically saying, hey, just put it somewhere in this general area.
And
There's
we're working
flexibility
to
in
try to,
achieving that.
we're working to try to get that connectivity through there. That is still to be determined. And we're literally working on some of that right now.
Because for, you know, I don't know what definition we're using for open space, but one of the things that I understand about open space is the idea that it's not encumbered, you know, overly with certainly asphalting or things that detract from the recreational experience. And so I'm just wondering if we don't know where the BST trail will go, or whether, you know, and I understand, I'm in favor, I want you to know I'm in favor of an initial design, something that especially gets our foot in the door for having a multi-use path. Make sure that the continuous multi-use path from the mouth of Big Cottonwood Canyon goes all the way to Little Cottonwood Canyon. You know, I think it'd be interesting to get a consensus with stakeholders on whether they want to entertain a roadway that goes up into the open space to access a parking lot, because most people that hike and ride their mountain bikes are accustomed to having to get places on foot.
The scope of work doesn't say anything about parking being part of it. That's all part of the stakeholder input you're referring to. It happens as part of this. There's line items in the contract that they come to city council, they come to the Parks, Trails and Open Space Committee. Utah Open Lands has a conservation easement. They have ownership in this project, so it has to go through them as well. So to me, the stakeholder input and that feedback comes through this design process.
Well, some of the feedback I want the council to be real clear on is how many parking stalls we already have in our foothills. And you know, we have now a Bell's Canyon, huge tiered parking, stacked parking is very close also to this property. And then we have the swamp lot, and we have, of course, the Canyon Center. I just drove through the two underground parking lots there and I should say underground structures and there were hardly any cars in there. So I hope that we'll really consider some kind of a shuttle system that gets hikers to their locations without having to build more parking lots.
I was there. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to touch on this quick and then I'll turn it back over to the council. So we've added the shared use path language into the scope. And then down in the mobilization kickoff task 1, we've added an acknowledgement that there is an existing unimproved parking area that currently exists on the site. As you can see, it's kind of adjacent to the site. Some of it's on the site, some of it's in the right of way. But we've stated that will be factored into design concepts as is deemed appropriate. So that'll be part of the process, is figuring out, hey, can we use that as an interim measure? Do we phase this thing? What's the approach? And that's all covered as part of this design.
Okay.
My only comment is parks are typically considered open space. And people do drive cars to parks.
And I did speak with Wendy Fisher with Utah Open Lands, and she said, if we don't have a plan, then UDOT could come in and kind of push us out and say, this is what we're going to do. You don't have a plan. So at least if we have a plan, obviously that's variable, right, Mike, as far as that plan.
It is a concept
This
plan.
is-
There's no engineering details. We're not getting into
Right.
that level of.
But she's a big partner of this. We got, this is the Despain property, we call it, but that's 26 acres that we both, all of us have a vested interest in that piece and farther north, obviously.
Anything, Councilman?
No,
Okay,
good.
great. Well, thank you. So we will be voting on this this consulting agreement to go ahead with some design services so that we get something on that. So thank you. I appreciate everybody's input on that. That's great. We won't rediscuss this in the business meeting. So, but thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. And Tim. So, and then our consent calendar, because we had a business meeting or council meetings just a week ago, this will just be for our February 16th legislative meeting that we held. So that will be the minutes
The
from that.
online Zoom meeting.
Yes. Yep. Okay, so we will not be approving the, we'll wait for a little bit on the previous meeting. Okay, so item 3 is a review of our website. I know we're all anxious to make sure that we present something to the public that's user friendly and nice, and we've all had feedback from lots of people. So we've got, I'm going to turn the time over first to our city manager Tim Tingy. We're grateful to have Lindsay here, who's our communications manager, to talk about this as well. So Tim.
So our website for a number of years, and many of you are aware, we've always had great desire to have as good a website as we can and to make it as transparent as possible. I think multiple times over the years since we've been a city, we have gone through an RFP process to revisit and modify the site, which we did just 4 years ago. Right after I came here, the city council allocated some funding for that, and Lindsay will talk about this, but the funding was not to rebuild the website, but really to migrate the information to a new website and have a different provider. And we did that RFP process to do that. Because I know all of you get questioned about what's on the website, how it could be better. That's something we're always looking at. I do want to say a couple of things related to this. We have 2 individuals that really understand websites and the communication side of things. Lindsay is one, Matt Urban is one, Alex is as well. We have 3 actually. And I'm grateful for their expertise because they've helped me understand a lot about what we've done, what we're doing. We're in the process of a continual update and improvement of it as much as we can under the existing provider. And we want to make sure you understand what efforts that we've gone forward, what we're working towards. And then if you want additional improvements beyond that, we can even talk about that and look at budgetary items as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over, but I don't think all of you realize all of the work that Lindsay is putting into this and I'm not talking about just ongoing things. She's been going in and connecting so many different things to enhance our website, especially in the last several weeks and months. And they're gonna walk you through that so you understand where we're at with this. So go ahead, Lindsay.
Okay, so a little bit of history, like Tim was saying, so in 2019, the former communication manager worked with the committee, and Scott Bracken was on that committee too, so he may weigh in. But they migrated the content from the old website provider to the current platform, which is Granicus is our current platform.
You're giving me unnecessary
my
undue credit.
Okay.
The last one I
okay.
was very much not involved.
Okay.
If there's a problem with it, Scott.
It's not, that was. So,
That's fine.
and then when they were about 30% of the way through the migration, the council provided input about website examples that they preferred, so sent different links to websites that they liked. But the websites that they liked cost more than the budget, 75% more than the budget, which was 21,000 at the time. So, and Scott Jurgis actually gave me some numbers too. So 21,000 was the implementation cost. And then we currently pay about, it depends on the year, but around $700 to $7,500 per year, just as a service cost to continue using Granicus. So 21,000 was the cost to migrate the content over. And
So can I ask you what
Yeah.
they do for us in a calendar year?
What
So I know they're hosting and some other things, but what are some other things that they're doing?
so we'll get into that a little bit
Okay.
later too, but
And you can hold on.
well, the main thing is that they host, so they are the platform, and then they also provide service to us. So we don't have a web developer on staff, and we don't have a dedicated person on staff to manage the website, so that's fallen to me. And so what Granicus says is if there is a website issue that I can't fix, then they provide 24/7 staffing.
Okay.
To help with that.
They also, I'm just gonna jump in, they also house the server itself, so that we don't have to house it in the building. Because we don't have the resources to house that at this time.
But we give them content and then they input the content we give them.
Yes.
Is that?
Well,
Say yes. they said.
No,
well, yes
Yes.
and no.
I
They,
see. Oh,
we,
right.
I mean, I manage the website, so anything that's on there, I'm adding the content to it, but yeah, they are housing it, they're providing a platform.
And
for
does
the
that
content.
cover Instagram, all of them?
No,
No,
No.
that's separate.
Those are separate, so Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all of those are separate
Different entities.
entities that I'm posting that content on those social media platforms.
If Lindsay can't do something on the website, she can reach out to Granicus to help.
Yeah. Yes. And then because it was a migration instead of a redesign, many people have been unhappy with it. And this is because they took the existing content and rather than redesigning, it was migrating the content to a new platform. So that's what we'd like to avoid if we decide to go that route. So then today, so this is an overview and we'll go
Can you
through
go
these.
back? Sorry, the last statement I was reading, there were a few websites. Okay. got it.
Yeah, meaning changes to the structure, because they didn't change the way, they didn't change categories, anything like that. They just migrated the content over to the new
Got it.
platform. So we'll go through this and then I'll have Alex pull up the website so I can show you this, but so since I started in February 2021, this is what I've been working on. So consolidating information, because like I said, it was a migration. They took all the existing content. So we had stuff on there from 2018, 2019 that needed to be cleaned up. So consolidating a lot of that, deleting outdated, unused pages, fixing broken links, updating old PDFs. The slider images, which we'll show you in a minute. Before I started, we didn't have those consistently updated. So the slider is the big image on the homepage when you're on a desktop. And so now I'm updating those. I put, whenever we have a new newsletter, I put the image for the newsletter on there. I put banners up to remind people about meetings, and you'll see that in a minute. Also adding events to the community calendar, which is on the homepage, and then creating new pages. Like road projects as an example, and then one for ranked choice voting when we did ranked choice voting in 2021. And then the city council spotlight, so that's on the homepage too. And then you can go to the next slide. So then last year did more of a deep dive. So the city code page before, and I know someone had a question about the city code page too, that's entirely searchable. So before we had that, we would have different teams upload PDFs of the code. Yeah, my slide, because they were all on different pages and then they weren't searchable because they were PDFs. So got rid of all of those. So, and then redirected the code page. So anyone that wants to search the city code can just search there without trying to go through PDFs or find different PDFs on different pages. And then a big thing that I focused on last year too, that you were aware of from Tim's council communication was removing all of the staff emails from the web pages. And so Matt could speak a little bit more, but Matt's not here. Oh, Alex will talk a little more about that.
One of the latest cybersecurity threats that we have is website scanning. And so if you have an email on a website, people who are bad actors will grab that and will use that to just blast you with emails. And we actually saw a really big uptick in that activity last year, especially around October, November-ish. And so then we noticed that it was everybody that had an email on the website. So we've made a really big effort with Lindsay to remove those so that they're not another vector.
And we do have, I mean, we want to make sure transparency is a critical issue. There's still opportunity on the website to get all the information that you need from the different areas. And you can submit that. So that's still a part of it. It's just the specific emails because of these cybersecurity issues. And this is something that many communities, many organizations are doing, public organizations, just because these threats to cybersecurity, as we know with some of our partnering cities in the state, they've been hit, and we don't want to be hit with some of these issues. So that's one of the reasons.
Yeah, and the forms are really great. It kind of provides a middleman to prevent us from getting the viruses, and we know it's from a trusted source. It also helps us as we have staff changeover. Things don't get lost with somebody, receiving an email and they're no longer here, so they don't have access, and so it just kind of keeps that really clean and concise.
So it sounds like you're trying to close the doors to get the bad actors and going through those.
Yes.
Exactly.
I think the training, by the way, has been helpful
Good.
because it makes me a little more paranoid than normal. And
The
so
goal
I
is
do
not to be-
appreciate that.
The goal is not to be
Yeah.
paranoid, but to educate.
No,
Oh, paranoid's not bad.
paranoid's not bad. Yeah.
And that's a good segue. So the forms, which is the next point on there. So how the forms work is, like Alex was saying, we're trying to get rid of individual email addresses. So the forms, and I'll have him go to the staff, city staff form when we show this in a minute too. But you can go and you select whatever category you want. So if you want to contact Public Works, and it sends it to publicworks@ch.utah.gov. It sends it to a group email. Then it sends it to everybody on the Public Works team. So everyone gets that. It's not an individual one. So if someone were to get fired or to leave the city, then we don't lose that information because their email address no longer exists. So it's partly for that reason too. And then created a dedicated page for the city council Zoom link, so for what we're doing right now, and then also added all the public meetings and city events to the community calendar, which is on the homepage. Before that, we had the city council meetings and we had the planning commission, and those were on the calendar, but everything else was sporadic. We didn't have architectural review, we didn't have historic committee, arts council. So all the boards and commission meetings are now on there.
Is there and I don't know if you want to have us interject
go ahead.
during this, but one of the things that I think would be enormously helpful is to have a calendar. And I learned this from Franklin Covey about 30 years ago. It's always best to have one calendar. And so just like I'm looking at Sandy City, their singular calendar shows not only the community events, but also all of their meetings. And I think that would be more effective than treating meetings separately from community events. I also would like to see that in our newsletters. I know when I held my town hall meeting in January, it was like, well, the events for January. And my town hall meeting was not an event. So I hope that we can have a little bit more of a comprehensive conversation tonight about how we heighten public engagement through really, our website, our newsletter, and all the different things that we utilize that would, help our citizens to, be able to see things, more quickly and and not, I think separating that out in different calendars and listings is not helpful to the general
Andy's
public.
homepage has a calendar on it.
It does. So, and then when and it's a click away, and then you end up on a calendar of events, and it shows not only events, but also the meetings, and it's just, wow. It's
Well,
nice.
that's
plus
what
you
we've
could-
added.
Yeah, so our calendar does the same thing, so we'll get to that. Oh, are you pulling it up? Yeah, go ahead, just pull it up right now. So you scroll down and then it's right there in the middle, community calendar. And so it has all of the events. So I usually do about 3 months in advance that I put on the homepage. And I mark them to be on the homepage, because if I didn't, it would not be ADA compliant, which we'll go into later too. So it goes through June, because I put the shredding event because we had a lot of questions about that. Then if you scroll down a little bit more, then you click more events, and it takes you to the calendar, and then it lists everything going forward through the rest of the year. So it has all the meetings. So it's got city council, arts council, legislative work session, the council dinner, planning commission, historic committee, and then it has musical auditions, Easter egg hunt. So it has all of the meetings mixed together.
So is
in
there a
events.
reason that like our platform cannot do a calendar like this? I think people have become really accustomed to being able to, at a glance, there's the month, and then click, go to the next month, as opposed to seeing things.
Dates listed versus
Yeah.
a calendar.
I think that's.
Is that possible, Lindsay, you know?
It's not possible right now on the homepage. I have a call, or I have a call scheduled with our account manager. He was out of the office this week at a conference. So I have it scheduled for next Wednesday, I believe. And I'm going to go through, and we'll talk a little bit about the homepage in a minute too with this. But
My only comment on the calendar is some people prefer a month, some people prefer a week. And there may be, I don't know if they want to go, if you want to get granular to the point where it's council meetings, click on or off, view these types or that types, or if it's just those types of things.
you can, if you go, sorry, Alex. will
I mean,
you
if that's
go
already in
down?
there, that's great. That's just something else that would.
No, that's a great point. So you can filter by next 7 days right there under category. Oh, it's that. Yeah. Okay. So you can select categories. So if you only wanted to see city council meetings, you can do that. And it'll show you all of those. Again, it's in a list view. So I'm going to find out if there is a way to make it more visually appealing. Or you can also, up at the top, you can do next 7 days. Sorry, there's too many buttons. Next 7 days, and then it will show you just what's happening in the next week. Although he's still under city council meetings, so it's only showing those. But if
I mean,
it's cleared,
To me, a
Yeah.
rule of thumb is kind of like riding transit. If you have to transfer more than 1 or 2 times, you
I
say,
teach,
forget
I
it.
laugh because it's transit got it.
I know, it's my metaphor. You guys use sports, I use transit. Okay, thank you.
yeah,
So in the metaphor there, people don't ride the bus because they have to transfer more than once or twice. And I think it's similar when you get online. If you have to click around, eventually, oh, forget it. So I think we need to be thinking as few clicks as possible.
And
Yes.
Liz is gonna address that
Yeah,
because
that one-
there's a standard out there related to this.
Yeah,
So-
yeah,
so go ahead.
we'll go into that too. Okay, if you want to go, so let's go back and finish, and I'll finish talking about the rest of the changes. Okay, yeah, you can go to 2023. So then this year is when I've made a whole bunch of changes. So I'll have Alex show us this in a minute, but now when you go to the homepage, if you click on the categories, they're all landing pages, and this is part of ADA compliance. So what that means is the American Disability Act requires that websites follow certain guidelines. So one of them is you're supposed to get to where you want to go within 3 clicks. That's the goal. It doesn't always happen. So that's why we're making landing pages, so that if you hit this landing page, then it links to all these different things, and you can go, oh, I want to go to events, or I want to go to city council agendas. And then from there, you find what you want. So we're making landing pages with these icons. Also the mobile website, which Alex will show in a minute, we've got more icons on there that also link to those landing pages so that you can get to them right from your phone. And then along with ADA compliance is removing language like click here for, because people that use screen readers that are visually impaired, if the screen reader is reading click here for, it doesn't tell them where to click, if that makes sense. So you want to be really specific, so you say view the agenda and hyperlink that phrase instead of using the words click here, things like that. So I've gone through the entire website and gotten rid of language like that. Also, like I was saying before with the content migration, there was content from 2015, 2018, just years back. So I went through this week and deleted all of those so that it will help with search results as well. So that if you're searching for something, it doesn't bring up something from 2015. And then,
Back in the dinosaur ages.
you what?
Dinosaur ages.
Yes. No, I don't mean it's, I mean, in a website years,
Oh,
that's.
no,
a
you
long
don't want
time.
content that's gonna get in the way of the real stuff.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
want the most, so, and that's another point too, is that I've cleaned up everything so that all the pages show only agendas from the past calendar year. So that you can find the most relevant information that it comes up in search results and you can find what you need.
So one of my constituents on this topic contacted me to say that there was an interest in being able to get to the mixer audio recordings. And she said, well, it used to be that you could go back for 2 or 3 years, and now you can only go back 12 months. So I went in this afternoon and tried it myself. And in fact, it went back a year, but then it suddenly showed the first 6 months of 2016,
Okay,
which maybe is an anomaly that just needs to be cleaned up. But I think that when it's important things like, being able to go back and listen to audio recordings, I think there's a lot of relevant things that do happen in, let's say, a 3-year time frame. And she said, when I called into the city, I was told that I could do a grammar request. Well, I think that's onerous on a citizen to have to do a grammar request to be able to hear an audio recording. So I would frankly like to see those Mixar recordings go back 3 years for both the planning commission and the city council meetings.
so I don't have access to Mixler because it's a third party. And Paula might have more information about that. I know they've changed some things on.
Yeah, they, so the platform was bought by another company that's actually based in England, and we have no control over how long they keep them. I have the recordings on the P drive, we archive them, so if anyone needs one, I will have it out. They do need to be the grammar, like any other company. But I don't control the platform when they keep it.
Interesting.
I was gonna mention too, when you have an archive page, it takes up a lot of space on those web pages.
Yes.
It does it,
Yeah.
where you just can't run your web page.
Yeah,
Our website, I know city websites in general tend to be very, very, very data heavy,
yes.
which is something we need to deal with. I mean, yes, it would be great to be able to pull all that stuff up. So we have to strike that balance.
Yeah.
I'm glad we at least have them because we need to keep them. There's, what is it, a 7-year thing or the audio recording?
Yes, I have them for as long as.
I know minutes are forever.
Yeah, we keep them. I don't delete them, and
Are
I don't
the-
go back 7 years and delete them.
So PDFs of the minutes, could they be made a link, click away for residents, even if the audio
If
recordings
they're
aren't?
available on the site, yes, but if they're not, they can ask.
But what I'm trying to get to is to make our website a click away versus a phone call to someone on staff or an email or a grammar request. That's what I'm interested in prioritizing and streamlining the website so that these things are, that's a part of our transparency, our obligation to our citizenry. So,
I believe our obligation is to be transparent. And I think as long as they request the file and we can provide it, we're being transparent.
okay.
Well, but as far as what the balance is that we have to have is, like we talked about, is the amount of data that we have on and what that does to your website. So it's a balancing element. I mean, if we have clear back to 2005 minutes, that's weighing down or bogging down with data, our website. There has
Blow
to be
you
a
to a
balance to
crawl.
that.
Well, I think I believe I just stated to go back 3 years. I'm
Yeah.
not suggesting that we go back
Yeah.
more than 3 years, but I think if it's a link away to get to a PDF, I mean, if a PDF, if 100 PDFs is a manageable amount to have on the website, I think it's a reasonable.
I think that's something we can look at. So,
If I'm,
Is it possible to create an archive?
I
with
can
those
talk to
PDFs?
I can talk to Granicus about it. It would, yeah, require having a separate page because the other problem is that ADA compliance. They ask you to minimize the amount of scrolling that you do too. So if you have all of the minutes or the council actions on one page. And until I clean this up, until I cleaned up, you know, the files from 2017, 2018, it was sometimes 20 scrolls to get down to the bottom of it. So you can't have it all on one page. You can create an archive that has collapsible folders, and that might be an option. So I can talk to Granicus about
Yeah,
that.
that's probably the better way to handle it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that if you're a university, you have millions of dollars to be able to have that kind of webpage where you have those archives locked in there. We don't have the millions of dollars to do that.
Yeah.
It's a capacity thing for the websites, and cost is a huge consideration as well.
Exactly. If I may, the other thing that does affect that is the search. If we have many minutes and documents, the more minutes and documents that we have, the harder the search is going to be able to find whatever somebody's looking for, because it will bring in all of those other documents.
And it's also not as smart as Google, so it looks for the exact phrase, and anytime that exact phrase is in a PDF. So like city council is in every PDF. And so it brings up every single PDF that has the phrase city council.
Well, I can say that if when I search on town hall, there's like one town hall that comes in from the last year, and then it's Tally Bruce's town hall and Christine Michael's town hall. So the search, I'm not trying to be only disparaging about the website. There are some good features on it, but I will say personally, when I put in a search word, I can't remember ever having it bring up the item that I'm trying to get to. So it's and I'd rather see things laid out in a way that people didn't have to use that search engine. But I think there's a lot of frustrated people trying to find things, and so
I just discovered that there were some pages with searches, because any place I ever search is the top one. It doesn't bring back a result for chicken.
Oh, you search chicken
I
on the city
searched chicken,
website?
I got 0, but I know it's in our code.
Did you
But
look
when I
up?
hit the code site,
Oh.
when I hit the code page, then I got all the relevant codes with chickens.
And that could be also because the city code page is a third party too that we redirect to, so it's not actually searching our website.
Well, see, and
But
even though I
that's a
was
great,
supposedly not involved in all of this.
yeah,
I didn't know that. I mean, I just go to the first place I see. So
Yeah.
that's something else to consider
yeah,
for,
that's a great
for
point
these.
too.
Did you pull
So-
up Rooster?
I tried
So
that
if you
too.
wanna
yes,
go
it
to the
Really?
had a 0.
website,
Come on.
we'll,
I'm being serious.
we'll show
Uh-huh.
a few things.
So-
That's a
right.
big deal.
Huh?
Sorry, Lindsay.
Okay, no, you're fine. So we will just really fast. So like I was saying before, so the big image here is called the slider image. So this, anytime if there's an event that you want to promote, I have full access to this. I create the sliders, I link to them. So Alex, if you want to click on that one, the March City Council meeting rescheduled. So this, oh, it already rotated through. So this links to a news story about the date change. And then from here, they can also get to the agendas page. So we're trying to give people this visual reminder of important things that are going on. And then also from the homepage, we can link to different events, or you don't even have to link to anything. And what I was going to say though is that this does not show up on the mobile site. Maybe show them the mobile site first before we. Okay,
In just a
it's
second.
gonna take a second because it's got to mirror it to the screen.
So how much deficient is the mobile site versus a laptop or something?
So the mobile site is. You can still access the full site on your phone, but it's mobile friendly. So he'll show you the icons show up, and also it's what's known as scalable. So if you are looking at it on a tablet, it may not look exactly like this. Okay, so here's what it looks like on an iPhone. Although if you have a larger iPhone, because he has is that your big one or is that
No,
yours?
this is my small one.
Okay.
So if you have a bigger screen, all the icons show up more nice.
And they shift too, so they might be 4 in a row instead of 3. But this is what the current mobile site looks like. So from here, you can tap on any of these, and these are the landing pages that I was talking about. So like if you tap, will you tap on public information? So now all of these landing pages are set up so that if you tap on public information, it brings up everything that is public information. You can go to city council meetings, the actions, that's the resolutions and ordinances, boards and commissions, that takes you to a separate page with all of the different boards and commissions, and so you can go to those and
See,
find
like to me,
agendas.
city council actions, I believe that's where our master plans and resolutions lie. Is that correct?
That would be under boards and commissions.
Because to me, there on that landing page to see, past, either, past meetings and also the ability, master plans and resolutions.
Yeah.
Would be helpful because that's one of the areas that I get feedback that people are trying to educate themselves on these things and they find like, where do I find that? City, where did you say it is again? On boards and commissions?
So it's under the. It's under community development.
So
under- and then-
ordinances and resolutions are city council actions. The master plans are in an adopted.
Yeah,
special
and yet
plan.
they
So those are two
fall,
different things.
yeah, but they fall underneath. Like, because I know Tim and I went through this a few weeks ago. I said, well, why don't we have the master plans? Tim said, we do. He said, all you have to do is scroll. But they appeared underneath the resolutions because I scrolled and scrolled through resolutions and then finally the master plan started coming up. And I said, who's gonna think of that? I mean, it was, do you remember this, Tim?
I'd have to look, because we have a specific page that's just adopted master plans. It's the only thing on the page. It may be
Well, yeah,
redundant. but-
So my point is, I think we need to rethink how people get to this kind of information, because it was like, I would have never thought that I had to keep scrolling to 2022-55, and eventually I'd start seeing master plans underneath that.
Well, and that's great feedback because all of these pages are customizable. So I can put an icon on here. If we feel like public information, if that's where people are going to be looking for adopted plans, I can put an icon right on this page that then links them to that page.
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful,
Yeah. we can do that.
Cottonwood Heights master plans.
Well, but there's probably be broader than that. I mean, there's master plans, there's a general plan that, I mean, all of those kinds of things that people may be looking for, I think. Yeah, even if it's an extra page that just links over to where they actually are.
Yeah, and it
Yeah, they
is,
should be easier to be found.
and we have, the page is called adopted and
Special plan.
special plan.
See, I don't, again, I'm hoping we can make this website more for John Q. Public.
Looking for it
Who
comes
is really
up.
gonna get into what the difference between an adopted plan and maybe there's a lot of really savvy people in our community. I think the more we can keep the word simple, like the word calendar. It doesn't need to say community calendar. It implies it's for the community because it's our Cottonwood Heights website. So the more simplistic we can make this and, that I think would help a
Yeah.
lot.
We can do that.
I just type in master plan and it pops right up.
Oh, good.
I don't
That's
know what
great.
L9 master signage plan is, but
Well, I'm glad it worked for you. I mean, another basic thing is that in Safari, ch.utah.gov says that the site is not available. And then I've done this consistently in my MacBook and in my iPad. I have to go into a Google browser in order to be able to access our Cottonwood Heights
That may be-
website.
That may be just your devices
Yeah,
specifically.
Yeah,
because
it's
I look at
probably-
the Safari all the time.
I just,
I use.
Well, I'll do it. Okay, I'm gonna do it right now on my city issued phone.
Oh, yeah, I'm a little. bored.
See, so I only have
Yeah.
Safari and see, here it is, Tim, that Safari cannot, yeah.
So we're
That's
going
what I've
to,
gotten on all three, actually four, if I count my personal phone, so.
they can probably help you clear your cache. 'cause
Yeah,
that
but again,
happens.
it doesn't happen to me when I go on the Sandy City website. This is where I'm just wondering, how hard is somebody gonna work to get to access our website?
So
It's
For mine.
we have not.
No, we're-
So we can-
Yeah, we can look.
We can look at yours.
We can look at it.
offline.
Let's see.
Okay, so yeah, you understand how the mobile site works. So,
Want me to switch back?
yeah, if you want to just go to the desktop,
Yeah, give me a second. to switch
Yeah.
back.
because yeah, we want to be cognizant of time.
It's a pretty easy sport, just going here.
So, yeah, and I have a call with our account manager, like I mentioned, and I'm going to find out what we can do for the homepage too. We are limited to these 5 buttons right here on the side, so. But these are completely customizable, so if there's something that you decide we really need to have on the
And as a
homepage,
council,
we can.
this is what I'm most concerned about.
Oh, this is what you wanted to see. This is our website here.
Well,
That is a PDF of all the board meetings, so that's
yeah,
a separate
that's
thing.
not what I
That's what I just
want
pulled
to
up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
those,
that's not what I want. I want to see all of our community.
So this landing page, our homepage, to me is really crucial that we get right. Because I think whether it's bold headers, I think, anyway, I think, of everything that you've talked about has been really, really helpful to see some of the work that you guys do behind the scenes that we don't notice. And thank you, by the way, for all of your effort. The homepage to me is really crucial that we get right, that our citizen can go there and go, oh, wow, that's, something's coming up in the next week that, anyway. So, I don't know if we want to spend a whole lot of time discussing that, but this is the most important aspect of what we do website wise is right here.
what's across the top and what goes down there is where people are gonna start.
Yeah.
So
And
like
if
if
I
you go
don't
in,
find it there, then I'm gonna hit the search button. And apparently I need to learn how to,
so if you
code
go in
is a
right now to
different
how
subject.
do I went in there, because if somebody wanted to, find past meetings or anything, past records, it's like contact someone, find out what's happening in the city, get pet info, get involved, find a job. I mean, like that didn't answer,
So
that's to me a primary thing that people want to be able to jump in. How do I access the master plans? How do I, see past
And
meeting
all of those
minutes and those
questions
types of
can be
things.
added.
Yep.
Right?
Well,
So that
sure,
way-
they can be, and
Well,
so
that's.
that's what I hope
that's
we,
Yeah,
are-
And-
Send it to Lindsay.
so why don't
I
you
know
go back
she
to
can-
I
the,
have been for the last year.
Okay, well, excuse me.
Well, I just want to go on record. Tim Tingy could speak up if he wanted to support me on this. I've been giving suggestions for several months and
I have received your suggestions on, and I have made a lot of them over the past year. Okay, will you go to the presentation, please?
Yes.
So this is where I want to focus, like I mentioned, so I'm going to work with Granicus. Part of the problem is that the package that we paid for the $21,000, that does not include, they have the homepage very locked down. So when I contacted our account rep, he said, okay, we need to schedule a call to find out what you want to pay.
So if it was 75% more, we went with 21 instead of 35.
Yeah, so 35 was like a baseline, and I have no idea because we haven't gotten RFPs, and we'll go into that in a second too, but Matt, from what Matt was saying, it would be at least $75,000 for a redesign,
At least,
yeah.
probably more if you
How
want.
much did you say it's science? I paid 1.4 for ours a year ago.
Yeah, we're in that range.
is it because we're city entity? Is that the issue here?
No, it's that our website is essentially a collection of websites, because we have the Public Works page that is then 5 other pages within that, so government websites are so massive, and it just costs a lot. It costs a lot to have someone come in and to redesign a website and to go through and make it.
But
what
we
you
could
want.
have 15 sites, really. You know what I mean? With all the
Yeah.
different departments.
Yeah. And then I know that Sean, you were talking about a text system, which I've looked into. That can be added on to Granicus. The last quote I got, I believe, was about $15,000 per year. So that is an option if we wanted to go down that route, and I could get another quote, but I want to look into that. And then also on the homepage, I'm hoping that this will be easy with the rep next week, that I can talk to him. Put an email subscription bar so that down at the bottom, it just says subscribe to emails. I think that would be great. And then, yeah, working on the search function. All right, if you want to
That's
go
the
to the next.
difficulty with the text system and the email system is people have to submit that information first.
Yes,
If they don't do it, then they don't receive it. And
Exactly.
That's one of the.
Well, and I think a lot of people don't want their inboxes and their emails are already inundating their lives. They don't want to get emails on everything that comes out of City Hall. So I really do sympathize with the people who say, I'm not signing up on your email system because I don't want to get a notification of everything. I want to just jump on when I'm interested in something and find it within the calendar or, quickly, but to have more. So I don't think that's the solution.
So for the website rebuild, so if we did decide to rebuild the website, this is what it would take. So the IT team and myself would get a list of specific items from the council, from staff, of what you want to change and what you want to retain. And then the design has to be ADA compliant. So the goal is 3 clicks or less, limited scrolling, and then it must scale to a mobile device. So that means that it would look different on your iPad or your phone or on the desktop. And then we have to do at least 3 requests for proposals and get quotes there. They have to be built within those ADA standards. And also, like Alex was mentioning earlier, it has to be housed offsite. So we can't have, for example, I couldn't get my husband to build a website for us and then have him set it up because it has to be housed somewhere where we have enough data storage. And then we also need to have full tech support, which we get from Granicus and from other providers like that. And then strategy. So the past committee did it a little bit backwards where they gave a budget. They said, we need to stay within, I believe it was $30,000. What can we get for that? So we'd like to take it differently, get the quote, decide on what we want, and then you decide on a website budget that fits what you want. in a
So are we
website.
unable to, so it sounds like we had some different packages with Granicus that we chose. We chose a less expensive one. We could have done more. Are we unable to unlock what we have now to obtain more without doing a full rebuild?
Yes, so that's what I plan to discuss with
Okay.
Price, with our account manager next week is A, how do we revamp the homepage, and B, what are our other packages? Because that may be a
That
great.
may be
option too.
enough to just say, hey, we can make this what we want without doing a whole rebuild and.
Yeah.
I know there was some redesign parts after a certain amount of time that they include redesign, and I believe that's part of their contract.
Oh, hey, I'll ask him, yeah.
Great.
I mean, after a certain number of years, freshen things up, that's kind of was included with some of, at least that's what I recall.
Yeah,
Sounds familiar.
so I'll
I think,
find out.
I think the biggest thing that we want to take away is the specific improvements, right? If you can give us a specific, like, I can't find this, and it'd be nice to have a button for this, right? Those specific improvement and suggestions can really help us fine tune it to what we need.
Great.
And then the final thing is the launch of, apparently, last time they had an issue where they went live on the website and it wasn't correct. And so the website was blank. So what we'd want to do is build a new website, keep the old one, and then once it's live and all the kinks are worked out, then we move to the new platform.
Overlap it so it
Yeah.
doesn't have a dead
What
spot.
you have
Yeah.
to do in today's age.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Gotta run them parallel.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think that's the last
Well,
slide.
great. Well, thank you, Lindsay. I appreciate that. Thanks, Alex, for all your insight. Any other questions, comments before we, so
I
it
want-
sounds like we'll get some more direction on Wednesday after you have your meeting. So maybe we'll look for an email to the council.
Yeah.
With some,
Yeah.
some thoughts. Go ahead.
I just want to
Yep.
thank you for doing this. In the old days, we had yellow pages. And I haven't had that for many years, and we had mail. And now we've got generations trying to learn this tech. I've got grandkids that can do things faster than I can sometimes. So thanks so much for this information age we're in.
Yeah. thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank you.
Alex. Okay, item 4 is a city fiber options discussion. As you know, we've talked with multiple fiber providers. We're interested in our main goal in having every resident have the option to use fiber if they want. But anyway, so I'm gonna have Tim talk about kind of where we are and some background real quick.
Yeah, so just some updates. We have been in conversations with 2 providers. Most recently, these 2 are Utopia and Google Fiber. And I'll give you just a little bit of background with what has been happening. Those are the two providers that we have talked with or had at the work session where they do a full build out of the city at one time, or at least in a pretty narrow time frame. Received communications even today from when we put this on the agenda from Roger Timmerman with Utopia, indicating that they still have interest in providing fiber to our city if we have interest in doing that. You remember the model that they talked about where you have to, they do evaluate the take rates. And then once that's determined, we would enter into an agreement and then they would bond for that. But we would have to back the bond with our financing or with our funding. And so that's in general what their model was. Google Fiber, we've been having ongoing conversations with them, and I'll get back to Utopia real well. Let me talk about this real quick. They have recently, Roger communicated to me that Bountiful City, that they're working through agreements with them. I talked with Bountiful City providers or city manager today, and they are not doing the typical UIA, the infrastructure agency model. What they are doing is they did an RFP process that took two years, and they're still finalizing the agreements on this. But what they're going to do is bond for the fiber as a city, own the fiber, and then they've selected Utopia as the organization that runs the system.
Will run it.
Yeah, so that's a little bit different. It's a
$50
$50 million cost that they're going to use some form of potential excise taxes and other means. That's still undetermined.
Was
So
that Bountiful or West Bountiful?
Bountiful.
Bountiful.
Now, I reached out to West
That's a lot
Bountiful
of
too
money.
on Google Fiber, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. But that was my conversation today. But yeah, that's a different model than you see. It's not the UIA model with Utopia. Then on Google
Wait, may I
Fiber,
just ask a
yeah.
question? So with Utopia, is there still the micro trenching challenges in the roadway? No.
Not Utopia. They do all theirs through boring.
They do it like everybody's been doing it for decades.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the plus of spending all that kind of money and that commitment is for the boring versus the street micro
I
trenching.
mean, from a installation standpoint, yeah, there are other differences.
And just to clarify, through the neighborhoods, Google will bore or won't bore on our major highways.
So we communicated, Mayor and I had on arterials, they're willing to bore on arterials. We have two main arterials, Fort Union and Highland. Collectors, there's still question on that. In general, no, they will not. But we sent them our list of streets that are collectors, and they are going to evaluate that and get back with us. So let me be very brief. On Google Fiber, before this council was together, so before we had them come, we had been negotiating with Google Fiber for quite some time. And we had 4 documents that we were working through with them. One was the franchise agreement. The other one was the the right-of-way manual, and then the code changes that would allow for micro trenching. And then all tied to that was an indemnification agreement that's tied into our ordinances. So those 4 documents. Late last year, we'd had conversations. The mayor was in some of the conversations with Google Fiber. We had sent them those documents and said, this is kind of where we had negotiated, and we wanted to continue to have those conversations. Shane had sent all the documents to their attorneys to review. They forwarded them back with primarily just the franchise agreement. And we were concerned that they didn't give comments or really reference any of those other 3 documents because they're all tied together. So even last week, we had a conversation about that, and said that these documents are all very important for what we've negotiated and what we're working towards. You need to look at those 3 documents, the franchise agreement, the ordinance amendment components, and also the right-of-way manual. And you have to make sure that what we have in there that you're comfortable with, because that's where we need to negotiate. In addition to that, the indemnification agreement, they had indicated that what we had prepared is what Salt Lake City had. They have gone completely away from that and are not willing to do that at this point. So there's a number of negotiation points, but it's in their corner right now where they're going to evaluate those 3 documents, get back with us, and we'll continue the negotiations. and discussions on that. Ultimately, it will be a policy decision on whether you want to move forward with those things or not, or Utopia or others. So we still have a lot of conversations. I just wanted to give you an update that we haven't just been sitting and not doing anything. We've been having meetings, discussions. There's a lot of different things. I did reach out to West Bountiful. You'd indicated that. I talked to the city manager there after Councilmember Peterson mentioned that they had just entered into an agreement with Google Fiber. He sent me their documents. I've gone through those. They negotiated a lot of the similar things that we are trying to negotiate. There wasn't anything overly or more that I saw than what we were trying to negotiate. And I talked with him a little bit about that. So that's where we're at. There's going to come a time where we're going to have to come back and really sit down and hash this out and decide what we want to do. But I want you to know that we are talking with particularly Google Fiber on a lot of different issues. There's still a lot of things that we have to work through. And then if we wanted to move forward on the Utopia model or any other models, we'd have to look at that as well.
You guys, just real quick, sorry, Paula or Alex, see the pop-up that's on the screen?
You see,
It's Alex.
Go
Sorry.
ahead. Okay,
Sorry. Thank
It
you.
it usually is.
I have a question. Google needs to get to St. Thomas for that hub. What do they
Maybe.
call that?
Maybe.
Well,
They got
maybe.
permission, but they
Yeah.
may have.
But
an
I know
interest
that they've
in
gone all the
somewhere else.
way to the north of Sandy, which borders us.
mhm.
Isn't there any negotiating power? I mean, we had it that close before they came in and kind of took those other three items out of it. Everybody, I keep getting calls every other day of when are we going to do something with this? And I'm glad that you brought up that we are working on it, but where do you get to the point of saying, you know what, Google's not going to do it. Utopia will do this, but $50 million is a big deal.
That's,
That was
that's
to
not-
own their
And
own
that's a
fiber.
different model because that's if they own,
that's-
Bountiful's owning
They
their.
own it, but
Yeah.
if they don't own it, they still need to indemnify us, don't they?
So if you go with the UIA
Right.
with Utopia, they would bond, they would do the work and they would run the system, but we would back those bonds. So financially, we would have to back those.
So we'd be on a hook on that, and then Scott would have to go through that. to
Well,
try
but
to
if there's
figure-
a take rate, you know, what they presented to us when they were here, if the take rate is higher than what that backing of the bond is, there wouldn't be a cost, but we're obligated for a number of years on the bond. That's the risk. That's the risk.
So Google doesn't work well with sub companies. That's the other thing that worries me a little bit. If you run the main trunk on some of these, and I have to look into Utopia, but when you branch off of that and get another, say, secondary supplier, that Google won't do that.
No, Google does, no.
No.
They don't play well with other people.
They own it.
They own
They
everything,
run the services. They charge for the services. It's all theirs.
right?
And to be, I mean, for all those who are asking, why haven't we? I mean, we could have signed this agreement with Google anytime in the past,
Right,
but the concern has always been the damage done to the roads.
right.
That's millions of dollars of costs
That's
the
number
city has
one.
to pay.
right?
It's not free.
No.
They don't charge us anything, but we have to go back and we have to fix the roads. We have to fix the micro trenches. We have to do all the other things that go out. And I think the public and the council needs to be conscious of there's millions of dollars there. Now, Utopia does the traditional way that we've always done. They would respect our road cuts and things like that, the way that we've done. Their model is they own the infrastructure like we own the roads, and then they let other people use it. So the trucks and the cars and the bicycles, everybody can come in and use it. So from the Utopia perspective, if you have the take rate, it ends up, the net cost of the city is very minimal. But if you have a really horrible take rate, then yeah, you could be on the hook for whatever that bond payment is.
Can we reach out to Utopia and find out the term required length of time again, one more time? Let's see.
Yeah.
I think it,
And that
15 or
back end
25.
liability, which
Yeah,
you don't need
yeah.
is
the
scary.
what?
The back end liability to build.
But I
What
can
is
look at that.
I'm
The
with
bonds,
Councilman.
The bonding and everything else that if you come short, it just,
Well, that's where they got into a lot of bad press with
Mhm.
some of the original participants is they had some bad financial trouble back in the day.
Exactly.
The UIA is mostly fixed that, but a part of that is that survey would do here, what do they think the take rate would be if they think it's only gonna be 10%, and they're probably not gonna come out and say we.
But Murray's on the hook for how many years?
They're not on the UIA model, which is. a
They're
different
not.
model, But they're on the original model and they're on the hook. They refinance the bonds multiple times and it's a lot of years. It's
Like
decades. so.
30.
Oh,
30 years,
and that was the problem.
the old model.
That is the original, yeah, that was part of the problem with it. They were one of the originals. And
Don't be the first in the game, huh?
well, there are ultimately some long-term positives from that under the utopia current system, but it's a long time out there. But
One of the thank you, Scott. One of the purposes for this discussion has been that we hope our residents understand this is a really important decision. And so Scott's mentioned the damage to roads. I mean, is an important thing that we do as a council. Bonding, guaranteeing a bond. I mean, that could hurt us really financially if something happened down the road that. Anyway, there's a lot of things that make this decision really, really important. And we are committed as a council to getting this right. And so we want fiber available to every house, and we're going to keep working to make that, we're going to make that happen.
well,
So-
there's one point that I talked with Doug. The other potential, it's a kind of a nightmare scenario, but Google is a private company. They do their own thing. If they go dark or they decide to go dark, we have no recourse. That would not be the case in a publicly interlocal agreement type agency. I believe they did that in Austin or one of their other cities. They've since gone back, but they did say, this isn't working here and we're out.
Wasn't that in Utah? Didn't you say up north in
No, I
Utah?
thought it was
Google?
Texas.
It was Texas.
But,
Okay.
I mean, Google's not likely to fail soon, but they are a private company. The product is the people. For privacy concerns or for, security on the network, that's how much you trust them or someone else. So,
Awesome. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. So hey, we're honored to have a special guest with us online. So we have the Director of Public Utilities for Salt Lake City, Laura Briefer. So one of my friends online with us. So I wanted to say hi to Laura and thank her for first coming on. And we're going to talk about some of the things that we talked about in our retreat. Some of the water issues that we brought up, and we're going to have, I think if I understand right, Laura has a presentation, right? So hi, Laura, how are you?
Good. How are you, Mayor?
Really good. Thank you. Really
I
good.
thought you were going to be here.
I wish I could.
I forgot the present. Oh.
Hey, we'll turn some time over to you and then if you don't mind, we'll maybe have a little bit of discussion back and forth. So.
And I wanted to put it to the council and mayor and staff. I do have a presentation prepared. But if you'd rather just have a back and forth discussion, I'd be happy to do that too.
I think the presentation is great.
Okay.
Let's see what you have and then we can always interject as well. So if that's okay. Yeah.
Not a problem. Let's see, how do I share this? Oh, here we go.
Anything we need to do, Alex, or no?
I have the presentation. If
Okay.
you would like me to.
If you want, Laura, we can pull it up and you can just tell us when to move to the next slide.
That'd be much
No
easier for
pressure.
me.
No pressure, Laura.
So again, thank you for having me here, and it's really great to see all of you. I have prepared a presentation going over certain things that I think you might be interested in part because of the general conversation in our collective community surrounding water, and also because my department has a lot of initiatives that we are undertaking where we are involving residents of Cottonwood Heights as well as everyone else within our service area. So I just had a few things to update you on, and then hopefully plenty of time for a back and forth discussion if I don't cover the things that you would like to cover. So next slide, please. And I hope you don't mind, I used your logo in that cover slide to kind of indicate that, you know, we're partners. We see Cottonwood Heights as a partner to us. So, so just a little bit about our department. We are a department of Salt Lake City. We're also a municipal, under state statutes, we're a municipal water, sewer, stormwater, and street lighting utility. And for everything except for water, the utility only serves in Salt Lake City boundaries. But our water service area, as you know, includes areas outside of Salt Lake City's boundaries. And I have a boundary map here that you can also find on our website. But it includes portions of Mill Creek, Holiday, Cottonwood Heights, and there's little pieces of Murray, Midvale, and South Salt Lake in there as well. We have a lot of infrastructure on the water, in the water utilities side. We've got several water treatment plants that treat water coming primarily from our central Wasatch Mountain streams into a pretty vast distribution system that includes thousands of miles of water pipelines and transmission mains. We've got a very large workforce, as you might imagine, that does everything from designing infrastructure and repairing and replacing aging infrastructure, to regulatory compliance, to water rights and the legal side of things. So we have a very diverse workforce. And the last slide of this, actually, I put together a list of key contacts, numbers, and emails addresses that I hope that you all can keep and refer to, because we do have a large organization. And sometimes, you know, if you have a specific question, for instance, on water quality, that list will tell you who to reach out if there's a water quality concern that you have or a constituent has. Next slide, please. So the few things that I'd like to talk to you about include just a really brief overview of our water supply outlook for this coming year. I wanted to inform you that we are engaging the public and the community, including constituents in Cottonwood Heights, on our watershed management plan update. We are also engaging the public on new regulations surrounding lead in water pipes. We've got some upcoming reporting that we provide to our community, and we have a lot of coordination opportunities with the city of Cottonwood Heights as well. And I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about our annual budget process. Next slide, please. So just high level water supply outlook, as well as demand and conservation for this coming water year. As you can see by looking outside, and probably by a lot of the media attention, that our snowpack and water supply looks like it's in very good condition this year. We have a great snowpack, which I'm extremely happy about, as are other of my colleagues around the state of Utah. But even though we have a strong snowpack and water supply, drought conditions are persistent. And so this is the most recent drought monitor that I pulled off the Intermountain West Climate Dashboard last night from February 21st. And it shows that about 99% of the state of Utah still remains in some level of drought. And you can see in the Salt Lake Valley area, right to the south of Great Salt Lake in this map, we are still in a severe drought. So 1 year of good snowpack it's really great for us on a year-to-year basis, but we're going to need multiple years of average to above average snowpack to help us exit this drought status. Also, Great Salt Lake remains in critical condition, and that Great Salt Lake condition also plays into, you know, us asking our residents to be very thoughtful and around water use and conserve water. We all have a really important part to play with respect to Great Salt Lake. So water conservation is really important this coming year. I did want to thank you for addressing landscaping ordinances, and I know that that's going to be helpful to Cottonwood Heights residents as they seek incentive funding from the Water Conservancy District. So that's really great. And I think our conservation manager partnered with your team on this as well. So we're just very grateful for that. Next slide, please. Watershed management plan. So Salt Lake City has had a watershed management plan in place in some way, shape, or form since 1989. This is the guiding document that protects the sources of our drinking water in our local canyons from City Creek to the north to Little Cottonwood Creek to the south. It protects those canyon sources from pollution. And the plan goes into great detail in terms of identifying pollution risks and develop strategies to reduce pollution risks to those sources of drinking water. It also informs Salt Lake City's watershed ordinance, as well as our collaboration with other stakeholders like the U.S. Forest Service and Salt Lake County with jurisdiction in these canyon areas. Just to step back a little bit, the combination of Little Cottonwood, Big Cottonwood, Parley's, and City Creek Canyon provide on any given year 50 to 60% of the drinking water supply to our service area. That does include Cottonwood Heights. And not only is the volume important, but the way that these water sources are situated geographically are really important. It's a gravity system. And so having good sources of drinking water from these these canyon sources of water is important to how the system operates. Also, Salt Lake City is the direct holder of water rights in these systems. And because of that, we have a lot more control about the allocation of those water rights than, say, other water sources where we are one of many that participate in the system, such as Deer Creek Reservoir, which is also a really important source of water for us. So these are critical water supplies. The Federal and State Safe Drinking Water Act requires that water providers like us have a plan in place that is called a source protection plan. And we have this plan, our watershed management plan is the source protection plan for our surface water sources. And we also have a source protection plan for groundwater sources. So this watershed management plan update is important from a regulatory perspective. And because these canyons are just so valued and so important to the quality of life of our community, we know there's a lot of interest in how they're managed. So the engagement process for this update has been really extensive so far, where we've had open houses and surveys and, a lot of interaction with communities that are interested in what's happening in these canyons. And we expect to continue that engagement process. We'll be finalizing the outcome of all of our vulnerability assessments and engagement and feedback that we've received from the public into a final report that we take to the Salt Lake City Council for adoption sometime in summer 2023. Before we take that for adoption, we'll be taking it to our Public Utilities Advisory Committee. And you have a wonderful resident who's a long-standing member of that advisory committee, Ted Boyer, who will be part of looking at this plan as well. I'm going to stop right here for a second in case there's any questions.
Laura, I have a quick question. This is Doug Peterson.
Hi.
Deer Creek plays into a lot of the water we receive. Is that right?
That's correct.
And so how far does Deer Creek go into to Salt Lake Valley?
So Deer Creek Reservoir it's actually was constructed as part of the Provo River project, which is a federal water project. And it's extremely critical to all of Salt Lake County and all of Utah County. So Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District, Salt Lake City Public Utilities, Metropolitan Water District of Salt Lake and Sandy, some additional cities in Utah County and districts all benefit from the storage in Deer Creek Reservoir. For Salt Lake City's service area on any given year, Deer Creek provides probably 30 to 35% of our drinking water supplies. And very importantly, it's our insurance policy for year-over-year droughts. So having stored water like that is really important for us to be resilient in drought conditions. We don't have that kind of storage really on our canyon systems here, with the exception of Little Dell and Mountain Dell reservoirs in Parley's Canyon. Those are much smaller though. And otherwise, Little Cottonwood, Big Cottonwood, and City Creek are just direct intake from the stream without any substantial storage on those systems. So the combination of stored water and these readily available sources so close to our city, it's a very nice position to be in our water service area, to have this a few different sources that promote resiliency and reliability of the supplies.
So is there any research on trying to be able to store any of that from Big Little and Mill Creek and City Creek, or is that just not in the cards?
I think a large or a storage facility for a reservoir for any of these systems may be difficult. They're just finding the space for it. There is work that we're doing alongside Metropolitan Water District of Salt Lake and Sandy for aquifer storage, which I think would probably be the best way to store water that comes down when we don't need it. So for instance, at the beginning of the spring, when demand for water is not high, but we have a lot of runoff, for instance.
And there's a way to go ahead.
Doesn't that water that we don't need though end up in the Jordan to then the Great Salt Lake?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, Great Salt Lake is there. We're doing a lot of work right now around Great Salt Lake and how conserved water could potentially make it to Great Salt Lake. And I think that's a really important thing too, when we're talking about our supplies and how that matches with demand and how conservation might maintain flows to Great Salt Lake.
This is Ellen Burrell.
Hi, Ellen.
Hi there. Can you give us just ever so brief on aquifers, how meaningful of storage, what amount, how meaningful could that be in the overall, going forward to help mitigate the problems of water?
I think that is still being studied. It definitely would have some limitations and constraints. There are issues related to water rights that we definitely need to resolve. And that's why the work that we're doing with Metro is kind of a feasibility analysis of what can be done and to what extent would that be effective. Ultimately, for stored water, what we want is to have that water stored so that it would be available to us at some time when we don't have good stream flows to meet demand. And so there's a lot of matching of what that would mean in terms of quantity of water available versus demand. And I know that wasn't a very exact answer to your question. So the bottom line is that that's something that's still being studied. Okay, should we move on?
Yes.
Okay. Another kind of big issue that is coming up for us are new federal and state regulations concerning lead in service lines. So service lines are the lines that come from the water main that's usually in the roadway to the tap in your home. And following the crisis in Flint, Michigan, and some other lead and drinking water crises around the country, EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, made it a priority to update their what's called a federal lead and copper rule, so that there is less risk in systems across the United States in terms of lead in drinking water. One of the things just to note about Salt Lake City's system is we are quite sure that we don't have lead in the water mains, the major water mains that run through the city, where we've replaced, first of all, the dates when many of those mains were put into place were post lead requirements, so they wouldn't have lead, but also some of the older parts of the system in Salt Lake City mains had been replaced that had lead. So really what we're talking about is the the service lines themselves. And the new revisions to EPA's lead and copper rule require all water systems to inventory every single service line on the system and to indicate whether that service line has lead in the piping or any of the components of the service line, and either say yes or no. And then if it's yes, then put a plan together to remove and replace service lines. And on a system like Salt Lake City's, where we have close to 90,000 connections, that's a very big process that we've already started. We've already updated our lead and copper program. But one of the things that we've been trying to do is encourage residents to participate in a service line inventory to help us out. And that will help us go a long way with meeting the inventory requirements, where we can definitively say whether a service line has lead or not. That's the first stage that's actually due, I think, in 2024 to EPA in the state. So one of the asks I guess I have is there any way to help us get the word out to Cottonwood Heights residents to help participate in this survey? Right now, we've had some response to our survey, but we have something like 64,000 service lines that are unknown, and we'd like to reduce the unknown number so that we can adequately budget for the future phases of this process.
So Laura, absolutely. And we will, we'll get that out on social media. We'll do whatever we can to help you with that.
That would be great. And then in turn, it would also help residents, because then we can identify definitively whether they have lead service lines, and then we can form a process moving forward, which the process moving forward, I would anticipate we do in concert with Cottonwood Heights City as well.
Do you know the year when lead was prohibited?
I do. And you know what? Why don't I send you, I have a fact sheet I can send all of you.
Okay.
That helps. And actually I have a website for our lead and copper program on the last page with key contacts and information, where we have all of that information available to the public. That would help us determine this. And then the other thing for the public to know, and this diagram shows, is that there's different responsibility for different parts of the service line. So there's the public part of the service line that is from the main to the water meter. That would be Salt Lake City's responsibility. And then there's the private part of the service line from the water meter to the home. That is typically the homeowner or business owner's responsibility. And one of the challenges we're having is we might have good records about what the part of the line that the city installed, but we may not have good records of the part of the line that has been installed by a private entity.
I had a question related to that. How many, I'm sure when the water line breaks, you get the call, whether it happens to be private or public.
Right.
how many of the private ones are you getting each month or year? And are they focused in any one areas or not?
Yeah, I could do some research to answer that question. I don't know that off the top of my head. But I do know, like the last, really, the last Arctic weather system that came in, we had a lot of calls across our system about private lines breaking. So some of that is also weather dependent. So I can definitely find that information for you. I just don't know right now.
Laura, I have a quick question. Obviously, we've been a city for a lot less time than we were the county.
Mhm.
And so some of the infrastructure that's down there is quite old. And does that affect, obviously, the counts that you'll get to individual homes if they're on the oldest part of the system?
It could definitely, and some of the guidelines we have on the survey is for people to tell us the age of their home, for instance. That really helps us know the age of the service line. So age definitely has an impact on whether or not the line may have lead in it. And to some extent, we've done some search in our paper records to determine that, but we need a little bit more information to confirm.
The private testing system in a home is not available, or is it?
It is available, and actually we have kits available for people to use to test whether the line coming into their house has lead or not. And I've actually used it on my home. I have an older home in Salt Lake City. And I was able to determine right away that my line is copper, not lead.
Gotcha. Thank you so much.
Hey, Laura, just a quick, we have a hard stop at about 5:40, so we have maybe 6 minutes left.
Okay, all right.
No, you're great. This is really helpful.
Okay, good. Okay, next slide then. I'll just be really quick here, but on an annual basis, we report water quality to everyone on our system. It'll be released this spring, and we have previous year's reports online too. And it just goes over, so it's fully transparent, sources of drinking water, how the water system itself, and then water quality results. We monitor more than 90 contaminants under the Safe Drinking Water Act. Our water quality reports have not found any kind of water quality concern in the past. And I think our 2023 water quality report will reflect the same. And so there's a link on here too, where people can access the consumer confidence report. And we also send that out in the mail. Next slide, please. Then I've talked a little bit with Tim about this, but I think that we have a lot of coordination opportunities. We work together on development review. We work together on road maintenance and rehabilitation and coordinating the timing of water line rehabilitation. I think we've been working with your staff on our upcoming reconstruction of the Big Cottonwood water treatment facility, which is shown in the picture here. So we really appreciate the time and effort that your staff have put in to kind of help advise us in working with the city on this process. And then of course, coordination on emergency water line repairs. And what I just want to say is all of these things, we're all very busy. All of these things can be hard sometimes. And I want to make sure that I'm here and available to the city so that we can work through any issues we might have on coordination, or we can identify opportunities for coordination where we might not have seen them before. So that's just what I wanted to say about coordination. Next slide, please. And then we have our annual budget process underway. Our advisory committee is working on that with us. And this year we'll be focusing on drought, aging infrastructure, replacement, regulatory requirements, and operations. So pretty basic stuff for us. And we invite any residents from Cottonwood Heights or any of you to participate with us in this process. It will go before the Salt Lake City Council sometime in May for their approval for the fiscal year. And we will be sending mailers out to all of our customers to let them know about that process. Next slide, please. And this is just the contacts and information, some good links and emails and phone numbers for all kinds of things that you or constituents might be wanting to reach us about.
Awesome.
And that's the end of my presentation. So.
Thanks, Laura. I've got a quick question for you. So at maybe a high level, if there was ever a contamination event, what type of measures do you guys have in place?
Yeah, so it depends on the contamination, the type of contamination. So I'm sure remembered the fluoride contamination issue with Sandy City. We've done after action reports on that event specifically to prevent something like that from happening. But in a water quality event, you know, we would be first, you know, reaching out. I mean, public engagement on that is going to be the most important thing for us to make sure we're alerting the community. We would be investigating the cause and the type of contamination. We would be working with all of our partners, our regulators, which is the State Division of Drinking Water, Salt Lake County Health Department, and all of the cities within our service area in order to coordinate communication and response. And there could be different types of contamination events that we have hopefully done a really good job at avoiding through all of our vulnerability and risk assessments and mitigation measures. But, you know, if something does happen, whether it's small scale or very localized or more widespread, we would be working with you and our regulators and our community very closely.
Laura, one quick question. The big Cottonwood facility is going to be redone. And they talked about where that was going to come through. Can you give us just a little bit of an update on the timing of that?
Yeah, so yes, so the timing for that, right now we're looking at reconstruction of the facility in 2027, but there's a lot that needs to happen before that. We looked at a lot of alternatives in order to reconstruct that facility. We cannot afford to lose the big Cottonwood source of water. So the first thing we're going to have to do is build a pipeline and a pump station to bring big Cottonwood water to the little Cottonwood water treatment plant so that we can continue to use that source in our system. Then we will be demolishing the facility and then rebuilding it. So there's a lot of work to be done before the rebuild actually happens. And we are coordinating with you on the pipeline. It's called the Cottonwood Connections Pipeline. And for right now it's under design. I can't remember when our estimated start time for that is, but I can get you the schedule for that.
Great.
Thank
That
you.
Cottonwood connection it's not like this summer, it'd be like next year, or is it sooner?
Yeah, it would not be this summer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Laura, thank you. You have a big job. I know you know that, but thank you for your confidence and for being willing to come and talk with us. I know you'd probably rather be doing something more fun, but thanks for spending some time with us and thanks for all you do. So
Thank you. It's fun for me too. And I just want to say hi to Councilmember Bracken. He and I were
I'm still here.
classmates. We were classmates in the MPA program at the U.
got it.
Laura, it's good to see you as well. This is Sean Newell.
Oh, hi, Sean.
Yeah, how are you?
Great to see you. Yeah. Anyway, so many familiar faces there. People I love to work with. So you too, Shane. So
Thanks,
have
Laura.
a great meeting and take care.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, item 6 is staff reports, and we're going to do a Dover Development Agreement update. So I'm going to have Tim talk about this real quick. And oh, it looks like Mike had to step out, so we'll have you do the whole thing. Okay.
Yeah, Mike had another meeting and he'll be back with us, so I'm gonna I'm gonna step in and do this real quickly. So we've given you background on where we're at with Dover Hill. The subdivision was approved. Go ahead to the next slide. The subdivision was approved previously on January 4th. It went to the Parks, Trails and Open Space Committee for review, as well as the Architectural Review Board late January. They provided recommendations. Next slide. You remember, I'm not going to go into this too much. This is what the configuration is of the park, what was approved at the Planning Commission level. Next slide. So what we've been working on is we've been working with the owner of the property, which it's the church property. And then we've also been working with the developer, which I see Peter is back there. Hi, Peter. And what we're doing is looking at the cost, and we've been able to work with the owner of the property and negotiate that cost where we keep the cost at what our original proposal was. And then the church would do a reduction of the price of the property with the developer of the amount of the park improvements, which is roughly $380,000. So that would be the cost to develop that park. What we would do is work with the developer on having them develop that park, because it would be much more cost effective for us at that point, in addition to keeping us within that purchase price. Next slide. So what the next step is we need to have a development agreement that you will need to consider. And that development agreement is something we're working on. Shane actually has a draft that we're close to having. And we're going to be bringing that back to you. But what the development agreement does, it doesn't really impact anything related to the subdivision other than just the park. And so it ensures that all the requirements of the recommendations of the PTOS committee and the Architectural Review Committee have incorporated or requesting us to incorporate. It also establishes acceptable timelines to complete the park construction. And so that's the main thing that we're going to be focusing on and bringing to you. But we do need some input from you tonight on some components of this. Go ahead to the next one. So this is what we showed you last time. One of the big questions with this site plan here is the Architectural Review Committee, as well as the PTOS committee, recommended that the parking area to the north and to this side, that the parking spaces be taken out of this. There's several reasons for that. One, it provides better visual access into the park. It also, there's parking on Dover Hill Drive. It's a fairly wide road, and there is parking there, as well as parking along this lower area, 7,600, what is that? 7,600, 7,650. So there would be parking there, and those are the main components. There's a lot of other recommendations as far as some specifics with the design of the park, but the thing that we need for you today as we draft this and work with the developer on this is your input on that parking component. Go to the next slide. And the next one. So this is what there are a number of recommendations by the ARC and also the PTOS, but the one big one is number 7, reduce the neighborhood bifurcation by eliminating dedicated parking spaces in favor of on-street parking instead. So what we would like is your input tonight on that. If it would be our recommendation to go along with ARC and PTOS on that. If that's the case, what we would do is shape the development agreement, work with the developer to make sure they're comfortable with it, bring this back to you for consideration in a future council meeting. We can even have a discussion on the development agreement and then bring it back for formal consideration. But what we're recommending is that component of it, as well as the other components that are recommended. And I can go through those, but I think we've already touched upon those. We would like to we'd like to have your input on that, and then we'll finalize a draft, work with the developer, and then bring it back for your consideration. Any questions, I'd like input on this.
Have we talked to those immediate neighbors? Do they have an issue with the on-street parking?
One of the neighbors in our meeting, he said it would be great not to have those parking stalls up there.
They're okay with people parking in front of their houses.
He
It's
just
public streets.
public street. They said also, if we had some down by the pavilion, that's naturally where you would bring your ice chest or whatever else like that. And so they said it would give it more of an open filling type thing, but it is that road widens there and there is quite a large area there that they could park.
Is
on the
there
side.
an option for different parking down on below on Dover Hill, or I mean on Summer, is it Somerset? What is it?
76 Day Summer Hill.
Summer
Well,
Hill.
there is so much, there's a lot of on-street parking right there. And the PTOS committee and art committee said because of all of that, it fits pretty well with what you would need with parking, and that's why they recommended what they did. So if you put parking up into the park area, you take away some of the components that are already in there, and that's not something we would recommend.
But it was a recommendation of some of the homeowners up higher to leave that open because they think it would block it off, so.
So in lieu of the parking spaces, that would be curved or what to be able to expand that?
We would probably have, it would probably be a landscaped area, similar to what you have in kind of an entrance into that.
And there's two of those retention type, what do you call them? I don't want to call them a pond, but
Retention basin.
retention basins that we'd like to see if the depth could be used, just like west of here. We have one that's still usable. It's not full of water, but it's there in case. So there is some open space there. It would be nice to leave open. And so it could work really well, I think.
Yeah, and that's some of the recommendations that came from PTOS and others that work on.
And it's a space like that when I think would give us an opportunity to look at some xeriscaping or something that it would still allow it to be open, but not be able to draw on the water
That was mentioned about all around there. There isn't a lawn area there, but all the way along there, that was mentioned to have the drip systems and everything to make it very efficient.
I think,
And my only concern would be if the neighbors, but if they're generally okay with it, then that's easily adjusted.
any other thoughts?
I support ARC and PTOS vision for this.
So I think that's probably the direction that we look for, yeah.
Okay, if you go to the last slide. And I'm gonna read this word for word, so it's gonna, no, I'm just kidding. So I've already talked about what we're looking at, so we'll work with the developer. Bring back the final design of the park, that'll be incorporated into a draft agreement. You'll review it and then consider that. We'll work with the developer to make sure they're comfortable with the agreement as well, because this is an agreement with them, so. That's where we're at.
Great,
That works.
so I want to thank Ivory Home then, for getting to this spot. I really want to thank the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They did not have to, their agreement with us was 700,000. We've decided to move where that is, and we were going to be on the hook to develop a park, and they've helped us through Ivory Home's willingness to build a park, to not have to put city dollars into development of that park.
So
So
all worked out really
yeah,
well.
we
They've
got
been-
had some great partners.
It's come a long ways from when we started.
Yeah.
It's come a long ways, and it was not an easy.
And I'd
place.
echo that thing.
Yeah.
I think where it's ended up has been a really,
It's a
been a
good
good spot.
place.
It's great to see it all come to fruition.
Great, well, thank you. So next is just a quick review of calendars and upcoming events. February 15th to May 31st is our Cottonwood Heights Children's Choir rehearsals that are held weekly on Wednesdays. And those are free ongoing registration for grades 3 through 6. March 2nd, tomorrow, we have our last legislative work session, thank goodness. It's not my favorite time of year. Anyway, so we will learn the last bit of news from that's happening on the legislature from our lobbyists. March 2nd.
There'll be something that happens Friday night.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Sausage.
So tomorrow night, we're looking forward to the youth city council dinner with the mayor and city council. Greg Burrell Scott does for that group. March 17th and 18th, the Cottonwood Heights Arts Council, Guys and Dolls musical editions here at City Hall. I don't know if we have a time on that, Tim, the guys and dolls musical editions.
The additions.
Yeah, while you're looking at that, April 8th, we have the city Easter egg hunt at Butler Park at 10 a.m. You know, great event last year.
And
Really
like last year,
well
and since there's not a separate event the night before for teens, they do have a 12 to 15-year-old
Correct. I'm
price
glad
there,
you said that. Glad you said that.
so.
6 to 9.
6 to 9, thank you. April 17th from 6:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. We have the Aspen Winds Family Concert. Is that right? From 6:30 a.m.
That
to
doesn't make
7
sense.
p.m. That doesn't make sense. Barnyard Shenanigans at
Maybe.
City Hall. We'll have to check on the time on that. That's April 17th. We've got some time to correct that. April 22nd from 9 a.m. till noon, we have the Cottonwood Heights Shakeout. Our emergency management. And June 2nd from 9 to 1, a free shredding event here at City Hall. I know lots of residents take advantage of that. July 27th through the 29th, the Cottonwood Heights Butlerville Days. Just to go along with the shakeout, I'm grateful we have our city manager and emergency management group are already coordinating on possible. We're worried about water coming out of the mountains. So flooding is going to be something that we need to be prepared for, and our staff is already working hard to be so that we are prepared as possible. What happened?
Are you lead on that committee, or if someone
Paul.
calls and has questions about details on what's being planned, who's best to contact?
It's Paul. Yeah. And you can call me as well. We're gonna be presenting at the next city council meeting about those plans, so let you know.
And the Public Works has been great about being able to get sand there for our sand bagging parties. I'm almost certain we'll need it this year.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you. So we do not have a closed session, but so I will at this point accept a motion to close our work session and enter after a 3-minute break into our scheduled CDRA meeting. All in favor, or can I get a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Second, great. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you.